Hi guys, I'm Field Operations Supervisor Curtis Savage, and I'm here today to teach you how to do list leave. Before we get going outside to do the actual exercise, we're going to need a few things. We need our clipboard, our census visitation record book, our CUID map, our pre-filled door droppers, blank door droppers, a couple pens, and our census ID. Before we get going outside to do the actual exercise, we're going to do a little bit of work before. We're going to double check that our CUID on our map matches the pre-printed door droppers that we have. And as a good habit to get into, get your enumerators to write their 8-digit CUID number on the outside of their visitation record book. Before we get out, we're actually going to fill out the first page of our record book with our map information in our visitation record book. Bear in mind though that the declaration of enumerator crew leader section we do not fill out until we've completed enumeration. So just before we get outside, one quick tip: put your VR map down on your clipboard first, then your visitation record book. Because of COVID, we're actually not going to be collecting any information in columns 10 through 13 inclusive, because we're not going to be making contact with the public. So to make this easier, just fold your book in half or open it to this first page and then place that down on your map to go out and do collection. So before we get going, we're outside ready to start. A couple things we need to remember to bring: our census ID in case anybody needs to know why we're out here, our orange reflective vests, which will be arriving shortly, and due to COVID, our mask. I'm not wearing my mask today for training purposes so that you guys can understand me, but I do have it with me in case I encounter anybody from the public. The first thing we're going to need to do is find where we're located on our map actually outside. So as you can see here, we're on the 78th Avenue, 97th Street intersection, right here at this star, which is exactly where we want to start. Now that we've located ourselves on the map, starting at the star, we're actually going to enumerate our first house, or first dwelling, with whatever building is facing the street we're about to start on. So as you can see here on this intersection, we've got a row of townhouses and then a single house over here, so we're actually going to start with the single house. We've arrived at our first dwelling. So in our VR book, it's going to be under 0001. But quickly referring back to our map, we are about right here, and we're enumerating block number 1 first. So in our book, under block number, we're going to put 01. Under column 3, the type of dwelling is a single family detached, which is type 1. This dwelling does not appear to lack heat or shelter, so we're going to leave that blank. And the dwelling appears to be well kept and in good repair, so there's no evidence that it's unoccupied, so we're going to leave number 5 blank. Okay, so now we've arrived at the part we're going to record our civic address, which you can see is 9708 78th Avenue. So under civic number, we put 9708. Under street name, we put 78. The type of street is an avenue. Under direction, we would only list something if that was actually stated on the proper street, such as north, south, east, or west, which was not listed here. Apartment number does not apply as we're not dealing with an apartment. And then we would put in column 7 today's delivery date, which is March 13th, 2021. The first step's finished. We recorded the civic address and all the pertaining information in our VR book. Now we're going to have to put that on our map. So we're about here. This is our first house. We're going to draw some box just to indicate that the house is here. And then we're going to just add VR 0001 so that anybody else who was reading this map in the future would easily be able to relate that information back to what's in our VR book. We're also going to have to address the direction that we've been moving through so that, again, anybody could tell that they need to enumerate in this direction. All this information is super important for the map. Bear in mind that the next enumerator needs to be able to pick up the map and totally understand everything you've put on here. So don't put unnecessary information, but don't forget to add important details. So the third step is we're now going to take our pre-printed door dropper, and just to double check, we're going to make sure the first 8 digits on our door dropper match the 8 digits we recorded on the front of our book, which they do, 48001001. And then we're going to make sure that this door dropper, 0001, lines up with the first line item in our book, which it does. We then drop this door dropping package to their mailbox, and that's it. move on to the next house. So we've arrived at our second house. I'm going to refer to line item 0002 in our VR record book. Again, this is a single family detached on block 1, so we fill in 01. Type code of the dwelling is 01. This dwelling appears to have heat or shelter, so we leave 4 blank, and it does not appear to be unoccupied, so we leave 5 blank. Civic address, as you can see, 9710. No suffix, and again, the street, 78th Avenue. No directions, no apartment numbers, and the date again is March 13th, 2021. So again, step 2, we now update our map. Indicate the dwelling, and we write beside it VR 0002 for anybody using the map in the future. And then finally, the third and final step, door dropper. We've got that 8-digit code matching, and VR 0002, which will drop in their mailbox. Okay guys, so we've arrived at a different type of dwelling, or a dwelling that at least has different type of information for us. So while this is still in block 1, and is still a single family detached in terms of the type of dwelling, we're going to record the civic address, which we can see is 9718. Still on 78th, still an avenue. But we've encountered a situation where there's clearly 2 different addresses here at this one dwelling, 9718A, 9718B. So this first line item that I'm going to do is actually just for 9718A, and I'm going to write that in the suffix column. I'm going to put the date, and then we're going to do the same thing for the second residence, 9718B. So this will actually occupy 2 line items in our VR book. When we update our map, we're going to still list this as one dwelling, because it is only one. We're going to put both of our VR codes. To reflect for any future enumerators that there's actually 2 residences here at this dwelling. And then last but not least, we're going to deliver our 2 separate door droppers, one in mailbox A and one in mailbox B. We've arrived at yet another different type of dwelling, still located in block 1, still a single family detached. But we've got evidence here that this house is for sale, likely to be torn down, and that there's nobody currently occupying the dwelling. So while the dwelling does still contain heat and shelter, which would cause us to leave column 4 empty, column 5 we're going to put a 1 in, because we've made visual observation that this dwelling is unoccupied. We continue to record the civic address as we normally would, which is 9724. No suffix, still on 78th, still an avenue, still March 13th. So we would still locate it on our map, indicated on our map. And this is important, guys. Even though the dwelling is unoccupied, we would still leave a door dropper. So for training purposes, we skipped a bunch of the houses in the middle, and we've arrived at the end of our block. But we're also going to pretend that the house behind me doesn't have a visible civic address, which you're going to encounter quite often in rural areas. So let's enumerate this one as if we can't see the civic address and that we're at the very end of the block. So what we're going to do on our map is we're still going to list the dwelling. In our VR book, we're going to make note that this is still on block 1. It's still a single family detached. It does appear to have heat and shelter, and it does appear occupied. But because we can't see a civic address anywhere, we're going to have to write in section 6 where the street name section is, a description of the house. Now the key points to take away here is that we have to only make note of highlights of the home that are permanent. We can't mention any color. So we're going to put stone wall, center stairs, and two-tiered roof. And the reason for that is this gives us the best chance when a future enumerator reads these notes of not possibly misidentifying this dwelling whatsoever due to the owner having possibly painted the outside a different color. We're only kind of putting fixtures of the house that we can pretty much assure will likely be here in the future. So back to our map, we've located the dwelling on the map. And we still have to list that it's line item 0008 on our map. So we've now arrived here at the end of our block. Just going to continue to fill in our directions. And we're now going to, as we always move to our right, head down 98th Street. There are no houses for pretty much the rest of the block, but midway through the block there's a landmark that we're going to identify in a second.
Perfect.
Okay guys, so we've arrived here at kind of a landmark that we can use to guide future enumerators. There's an alley here that runs, looks like all the way across 78th Avenue, all the way down. And we're about halfway down the block on 98th Street. So we're gonna just add this in as a feature on our map. That about halfway down, there's an alley. Okay, so we've arrived at our next intersection. One important thing that we need to update in our map, we have to update the addresses at intersections. So, as you can see on our map here, there is no house actually facing 98th Street. So in this case, we would put NCN for listing no dwelling. And then we would put on the adjacent part of the intersection, the first dwelling's civic address. So in this case, 9767 for the house that's listed there. It's important to update these intersections for future enumerators. For training purposes, to speed this up, we're going to just finish enumerating this block ourselves manually. So we've arrived at the end of this block, and we have a bit of a different type of dwelling we haven't come across yet, which is a duplex. So we're going to list that in our VR book, but first on our map, we're going to create our box to represent it, and then we're going to put a line through it so that people know that this is one building but is actually two separate dwellings. Flip over to our VR book. And if you notice, because of the direction that we came from, we actually have to list house 2 before we list house 1 in the spirit of continuing at the direction that we were going in. So on 0013 of our VR book, we're going to put that it's still in block 1, but that now the dwelling type code is 2. Appears to have heat and shelter and appears to be occupied, so we leave 4 and 5 blank. Civic address 9703, 79th Avenue. But for suffix, we're going to put 2. And then on the first divided box, the corresponding VR code. We're going to do the same thing for side 1. So we've actually finished enumerating this house, but coincidentally, we've noticed that we don't have any more of our pre-printed door droppers ready. So this is why we bring backup door droppers that are blank, just in case we arrive in this situation. And we're gonna have to fill them out manually. So in the provincial section, we're gonna write 48, 00. Our CU area is 1001. And we're going to write the corresponding VR number, which was the last house here on the block. So it's going to be 0014. And our CLD unit, which if we've forgotten is available on our map, is 3456. And that's it. We'll deliver that into their mailbox just like that. So one final thing here is, as this is the last house on the end of this avenue, we've arrived at yet another intersection which we need to update. So because this house, or this dwelling, excuse me, faces the avenue, we're going to put 9703 on this part of the intersection. And because the adjacent corner doesn't have a house facing that corresponding street, which in this case is 97th Street, we're going to put NCN. And that's it. So we've finished back where we started at our star, which completes the enumeration for block 1. So we would then move on to block 2. And here's a look at our map and our finished VR capture of block 1. So we're ready to start the beginning of block 2. So we find ourselves on our map using our star, and we can see that we're on the corner, the intersection of 97th Street and 78th Avenue, which, as you can see behind me, is exactly where we are. So now that we know that we're in the right area, we can see that block 2 is actually a zero dwelling block. So what that means is there's no people living on this block, but we still have to update our maps to give our enumerators guidance. So on the intersection corners, we're still going to have to put NCN, as there's no private dwellings on any of these intersection corners. We should still always get in the habit of writing the arrows that we would enumerate in, so always clockwise, always turning to our right. And then we're going to make notes of important landmarks within this zero dwelling block. So in the middle here we've got a park, so we would just write park. And then kind of the back half of the park, we've got an ice rink, and a social hall. There's nothing to update in our VR record book because we're not actually listing any dwellings, but it's good to keep our maps up to date. That's it. This is what a completed map of our 2-block area looks like. We've updated our intersection address numbers. We've indicated with arrows the directions we enumerated the blocks in. We've added all our dwellings and their corresponding VR lines. And we've added important landmarks for anybody that's looking for reference in future enumeration. So just to wrap things up with a couple of key reminders. When you're starting your first block, you're always looking for your star on your map. You're finding your place on your first intersection. Always list in a clockwise manner. Your houses should always be on your right-hand side. You're never going to actually cross any streets or avenues while you're doing a block. It's okay to cross alleys, but never any proper streets or avenues. You should always be staying within the block you're enumerating. And finally, if in doubt, contact your supervisor immediately. They'll give you a hand sorting out where you are and get you back on track.